before we get going, I'm just going to say a big thanks to our strategic partners. We couldn't do what we do without them. A lot of you might be already part of these organisations today, but it is an open masterclass, and it is open to non-members as well. So if it's the first time you're with us at Meet Business Women, huge welcome to you, and it's nice to see you this morning. And just a reminder of anybody who is a member, just to make the most of your membership. So if you log into your portal, you can register for our mentoring, you can see all our exclusive content, and you can register for the other masterclasses as well. And to all of those of you who aren't members, then that's great to have a look at after this masterclass if you've enjoyed it. A quick reminder of what's coming up as well. So 15th of February, we've got a returning to work after parental leave masterclass, which is great. Even if it's not something that's in your plan at the moment, it'll be a really great masterclass for future plans for potential parental leave as well. On the 8th of March, which is International Women's Day, we've got a brilliant masterclass called Unlocking Your Superpower with Carol Glover. And then the 18th of May is our UK and Ireland conference, The Challenge of Change, and that's open to members and non-members as well. So please do go online and get your tickets for that. Members get discounted tickets for that as well. So I'll just stop sharing my screen. I'll introduce our speaker today, Kate. So having spent over 25 years in the recruitment industry, Kate decided to take the leap and start KAG Recruitment Consultancy. Whilst there were some things that Kate loved about recruitment, there was some that she also didn't. And at KAG, Kate wanted to ensure that the relationships formed were from an understanding of the business needs and trusted partnerships were created. So KAG was born nearly 4 years ago and works in partnerships with clients, acting as an extension of their HR and training department, whilst continuing to support the traction of talented individuals. So Kate says it's been a challenge. It's been challenging since starting 4 years ago, but absolutely amazing at the same time, and no 2 days are the same. So warm welcome to you, Kate, and thanks so much for doing this with us this morning.
You're very welcome, Bex. Lovely to be here. Thank you all for having me on. Can you share the screen with me now, Bex, so I can go into my presentation, please?
It's all shared for you, so you just need to go at the bottom and share screen.
Right, just bear with me 1 second. Give me a sec. Bear with me. There we go. Can everybody see this screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. So want to give a brief introduction first of all to everybody. So Bex, thanks ever so much for your intro. We're actually nearly 5 years old, which is quite frightening when I think about it. A few weeks away now from the business being 5 years old, and I've worked in the recruitment industry now for over 27 years, which again is a bit of a scary fact to announce and sort of alludes to my age as well. I've worked across logistics, manufacturing, engineering, and IT predominantly through that time. I love recruitment. Absolutely live and breathe it, and I think it is one of those marmites. People do love it or hate it. But as Bex kind of alluded to, there were a lot of things that I really did not enjoy from being in recruitment. And you'll all know yourself from dealing with recruiters over the years, a lot of it feels very transactional, and that's what I didn't like. All of my managers were constantly pulling me up about the time I spent with candidates, the time I spent with clients. And to me, that was my reputation, which we're all aware takes years to build and 2 minutes to ruin. So for me, it was really, really important that I represented myself and the business in the best possible way. And what that meant for me was doing things outside of the norm from my job role. I would go out and do reviews with candidates that I'd placed. That wasn't something that we ever charged for. But for me, it was really important to see how people develop in a business. And what that gave me was a real understanding of the culture that I was working with. So when my clients were coming back for another candidate to me, they were sort of saying, you know, it's really important that they fit in with the culture. Now, if you don't understand that culture, how can you recruit for it? How can you benchmark what somebody's looking for? Because all of you individually in your businesses understand the culture you have as a business, but as an outsider, we don't. And that's one of the things that I implemented in the early days at KAG, was very much screening people against your competencies as a business. looking at whether it's your values, your mission statement, your DNA, whatever you call it, to make sure that I was looking to find the absolute right person for the business. On the back of that, I probably got told off umpteen times for the fact that I was doing things that there was no charge for. But for me, that was part of the bigger service. I wanted to make sure my clients were happy. Also wanted to make sure my candidates were. And I think there's a lot of it where, as I said, it's transactional, you're seen as a number. And from, thankfully, the testimonials we receive, people do feel valued. They feel they're not just part of a process. They feel fully briefed. And that's from a client and candidate's perspective. So when it comes to finding your perfect tribe, for me, it's not just about finding that person. It's about how you then go on to develop and retain them within your business. So we talked at the Meet Business Women conference about attract, develop and retain. Everyone's struggling in the industry at the moment, not just in the meat industry, manufacturing as a whole, but every industry we work with is talent short. It's a candidate market. So the difference you can make now is you. It's all about how you come across. And I think people go into an interview knowing that they've got 101 things to do in the day. There's been a massive catastrophe in the business in the morning, somebody's rung in sick, there's been an accident or whatever it may be, and you take that in the interview with you. So what I want to try and talk to you all about today is very much you thinking about, would you work for you? So ask yourself that question. Would I work for me? Do I think I really sell the opportunity in the right way? Do I sell myself? Do I know how to sell myself? And it's looking at those softer skills to actually think, when people come away from meeting you, have I done everything I can to secure that candidate? When that candidate's with you, you are their captive audience for 45 minutes, an hour, whatever that may be. They may be going to a competitor after for an interview, and you've gone into that interview 45 minutes late, running down a corridor, tea stain on the CV where it's been on your desk for the last week. Classic no room available for you to interview in. You're knocking at doors to try and get people out. Think about that from start to finish, what experience then that candidate goes through. 80% of a candidate's decision is based on the person they've met, whether they'll accept the job, not the job role and not the company. So as much as we need to make sure the job role and the business is selling itself in the right way, it's you as a hiring manager that's the most important person in this process. So I'm going to ask everybody on here to think about your worst experience during an interview as a candidate. What was the worst experience you had? Why was it the worst experience? And actually then think about why that still stays with you today. And I'm going to ask everyone if they're brave enough shortly to share this with me. So microphones off and let's share ahead. So I'm going to move on now to some further information in terms of the presentation. If anybody has any questions throughout, please take your microphone off mute, ask questions, or I think we'll be breaking halfway through just for a session then and then further on at the end. So this is my girls. This is the KAG tribe. So we're all very branded. We're all in red and black. I was going to put the red shirt on today, and then I thought, no, you'll think I'm really cheesy if I do that. So our aim as a recruiter and as somebody who works as a coach with my clients is to make sure that you understand how to sell yourself, but to how to retain people in your team, how to develop them, and make sure that when you've got people meeting with you, they absolutely leave you wanting to join your business. So our background, as I've said, in 25 years plus in recruitment, I think combined between us now, we're over 35. Again, that's down to the dinosaur in the middle. So a lot of that experience leaning over to me. I have to say I'm very, very lucky. I have an amazing team of girls that work for me, and I'm super grateful to all of them every day. They're absolutely incredible. I think they represent KAG's brand and replicate what we want to do for you as our clients and audience, make sure that we're giving you the very best service, but also to try and get you to see how good you are and value yourself. So attracting talent. Okay, so I've put together a bit of a snapshot for you of what you should be doing when you're looking at attracting people for your business. Now, we all know a vacancy goes over to HR. HR puts an advert together for you. You look at that advert, you send that across, or you put that out on whatever portal you're using. And actually, is it the right profile that you want to sell your business? Is it very word content? Have you ever looked at it when it's on a job board to see how it looks? Because sometimes I'll admit, we take a client's vacancy instruction and they say to us, oh, it's already on Indeed, or we've already put it on our portal. Do you want to go onto our website and have a look? And for whatever reason, how it's been loaded or where it's been loaded condenses it all into one huge paragraph. So when a candidate is looking at that, all they say is word content, heavy word content, can't actually decipher what the role is, where it's based, what the package is, which is ultimately what they want to say, and they'll switch off. So my first advice would be to you to make sure whatever vacancies you have, they're being sold in absolutely the best way for your business. So asking a question now, do you all get sign off on your adverts that go out? Yeah. Do you, if you're working with a recruiter, do you ask them to send the advert back to you to approve before it goes live? Yeah. Okay. A lot of people don't. A lot of people I work with don't do that. They just let it go out. And ultimately that's you representing your business. So if that's what goes out and it isn't the finished article and you haven't approved it, the time hasn't gone in from the start of the process. So it's thinking about getting that advert right, positioning it in the right way to the candidate marketplace. Make it look engaging, make it look appealing. Don't make it just look word heavy. Do you know what your employee value proposition is? Does everyone know that? Do you think you could actually share that with anyone when they come in for an interview? Anyone want to take their mics off? Anyone? Anyone brave enough? Come on, April.
The chatty one. I think that it's not a terminology that's been used with reference to recruitment that often. Value proposition is obviously a big it's big terminology that's used just in my role day to day, what I do, but not when it comes to recruitment. I think I could probably answer the question in that what I would say is sell to the candidate that's specific within the role and what they, what we've got to offer. But I don't think anyone's ever probably, articulated it in that way to me specifically around recruitment before.
Thank you. No, I appreciate you coming on and answering that for me. It is something that the candidate market is asking now. So EVP, what's your EVP? When we're speaking to candidates, we're screening them for roles. Well, what's the EVP of the business? What actually differentiates you from your competitor down the road? And that is what it is. So why do they want to work for you? What can you offer? What can their career path look like? They want to see what the people have been like who've previously worked in the roles, where their success has been. So talk to them about success stories. I think people are often very, very nervous to talk about the person that left the role previously, and they shouldn't be. For whatever reason, people grow, people develop, people leave a business. People actually are nurtured during that time. So for me, if I saw that a candidate had left one of my clients and gone on to one of my client's suppliers, okay, it may have not sat well with my client that they've gone to one of their suppliers. Actually, it shows that they've developed to that level that client wants them as part of their business. So for me to say to a candidate, well, actually, the role that you're going into, your predecessor actually went to work for one of the client's businesses, or actually was promoted to manager. That's what we want to be talking about. So don't be scared to share your success stories or where people have gone. Do your line managers have LinkedIn profiles that represent the company in the most positive light? Now, this is one I've seen some real shocking photos. So I've got to be honest, I do training with one-to-one with hiring managers. I do group sessions from all industries, and some of the photos I've seen, and let's admit it, we all go on and look at social media when we're interviewing somebody. We look at their social media, we look at what their posts are, we look at what their activity is, and that's fine. And most people do that, and they know that you're doing it as an employer. Let's flip that over. They're doing that to you. So a picture I saw a few months back now was a hiring manager looking really worse for wear, almost a coming out of a pub photo, pint of beer in the hand. You know, is that something that is going to represent the wider business? So it's really, really important. I know a lot of businesses have lockdown on social media of what you actually use, what you put out, but LinkedIn is a business tool, and it's there to showcase your business. It's there to represent you. So making sure that you have a profile, it sounds simple, make sure you have a profile picture that actually your business would be happy for you to put out to represent the brand. So it's making sure that everyone who's recruiting knows, if you're out there actively recruiting at the moment, candidates will be looking at your profiles. So or go on your socials, have a look what you've got out there. If you have Facebook, if you have Twitter, if you have Instagram, just lock them down to make sure that they're private, because candidates are doing a lot more digging at the moment and trying to find out more information from you. So whilst I appreciate, you know, everyone has a life and Facebook is your own personal tool, it's making sure that the photos on there that you would be happy for your manager to actually see. Okay. Consistent use of multimedia. So again, where we've said about sharing content, you know, LinkedIn is an amazing tool to be putting your posts out on, showcasing your success stories in the business. And if you're not doing it, if it's not on your portal already, on the website, you're not talking about new wins or success stories or awards or whatever it may be, put it on LinkedIn. Share the good news, because people want to see that the company that they're joining has that right message from the start off. They want to know that you're doing the right things, you're heading the right way, they're joining a business that has a clear vision. So make sure that message is consistent. And that you're promoting, as I've said, the business, its values and the culture of your team. We're all seeing over the pandemic, you know, everyone sending out thank you gifts. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for this, thank you for that. Why didn't we do that before? Why don't we say thank you to people before the pandemic? You know, I look at some of the profiles now and I see lovely little gifts going out and chocolate boxes and flowers. And I know we don't have to do that every day. We're here to do a job. We're here to do a job and be paid for. It doesn't hurt to say thank you, to actually value who you've got, because when it looks to retaining them in your team, that thank you can really go a long way. To valuing the people that you have here and making sure that culture runs through the team. So where I've just touched on briefly, you know, majority of candidates I work with actively view hiring managers, HR, again, making sure you keep everything up to date and relevant. And then the question I asked you all at the start, do you think about the candidate experience during the application and interview process? So a candidate typically spends, and depending what they're going for, if they're on a graduate scheme, a candidate would potentially be spending the best of 4 weeks of their life doing preparation. And that's preparation in terms of researching your company, researching the role, researching you, looking at the route, how they're going to plan to get there, doing a presentation, paying for travel, maybe booking flights, trains, whatever that may be, expenses that they're paying to start with. So when you then get that candidate into interview, to leave them waiting at reception or security, they don't know that they're arriving. That candidate thinks, right, okay, I've just spent the best part of a month of my life getting ready for this interview and I've turned up. No one even knows that I'm coming. The manager's not here. I'm being kept waiting. What have I gone to that effort for? So before you've even got a chance to showcase yourself, that's left a bad feeling. So who's brave enough to tell me about their worst candidate experience? Come on. Take your microphones off.
I'll go again if you want.
Go on.
I can remind. What I really don't like is when you go to an interview and like they obviously haven't read your CV, digest it at all. I understand that they're very busy, and as you get more senior, it becomes more time demanding. But when you go in and they literally have no point of reference from anything that's on your CV, you just think, well, why am I here?
Yeah.
And that I find that quite disrespectful, actually, because like you say, it's such a big part of the candidate's like life. And I think sometimes people forget how impactful that moment is on them and their life, and it can make you have a really bad taste, I think, about the company.
I also feel that people forget, April, that they've been there themselves. So what was your worst experience?
I think that's the worst one that I can come back to mind in the last few years, was when I went into one and it was a really big deal for me. And I kind of thought, I don't really know why I'm here. Like, so has someone just told you to interview me, which just felt a bit rubbish anyway. And they just had no idea what was going on, no point of reference at all. And I just thought, well, if you haven't got time to read a CV for an interview, then why would I have time to put everything that I know I put into my job for you?
And did you decide at that point not to proceed?
Yeah, no, I went somewhere else. Yeah.
So straight away, and now if anyone said to you about that business, that would be what would stay in your head.
Yeah, it's just a bit of a bad feeling, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just a sour taste in your mouth about it.
Yeah, and I don't think people understand how serious that is. So Bex, I'm really going to put you on the spot here now. Have you got a bad experience that you want to share?
Yeah, I do actually. I was just thinking, I was sort of racking my brains before to think of one, but to me it was, I went to one, and again, like April said, it was quite a big deal for me to go to this particular company. And I went for one role, and within sort of in the middle of the interview, got told that there was also another similar but different role. And I was being interviewed for both, and that just completely put me off track, because you know how nervous you are in an interview. And I obviously hadn't prepared for that, and obviously I understand that things change and things move really quickly, but for just that piece of preparation that I needed at the beginning of the interview just didn't happen, and it just completely caught me off guard.
Yeah.
So
then you look like you're underprepared.
Exactly, yeah, and it leaves a bit of a bad taste in your mouth, really. I think when it feels like they've not given you the time to prepare properly.
Yeah.
I'll
share mine with you. So this was one of my first ever roles that I went for, and I'm going to describe this in exactly how it felt. So I turned up on time, 10 minutes before I was due, which I always think is the right amount of time, not too early and definitely not late. I was asked to wait in what was a massive greenhouse, hot summer's day. It was a conservatory, it felt like a greenhouse. So we all know we get into interview and you start getting the sweaty palms and you're trying to wipe them off on your trousers, because you don't want to then put your hand over and give everyone the floppy ham-fish shake, because that's awful. And that's what they remember about you. So I'm sat in this greenhouse baking, really nervous about the interview. They came out to me, obviously, to acknowledge that I'd arrived. Then nobody came out for 45 minutes. So I sat for 45 minutes, almost to the point where I got out and drove off, because I just thought, no one has even come to acknowledge how long I'm going to be before I go into the interview. I haven't been offered a drink. So I'm sat sweltering this boiling hot day in a greenhouse, and nobody has come in to apologise. So the first few things then straight away, timekeeping, manners and communication have gone completely out the window. And actually, when I went in for the interview, all I could smell in this room was food. So what the hiring manager has done is kept me waiting 45 minutes while he's eating his lunch. And nobody's acknowledged that fact. And it's at the point where I could really smell food. So he has clearly done that. And there was no apology for being late. No sorry for keeping you waiting. Yes, I was offered the position. And yes, I turned it down. Because if that's what's going to happen before I even work for you, what's going to happen when I do? So it's little things like that of making sure that when you book somebody in for an interview, you are as invested in the process as they are. Okay. So moving on to selection process. As we've said, we all get nervous before an interview. I get nervous if I'm interviewing somebody. I don't know how you all feel about that. You get a bit apprehensive if it's someone that you're really excited about and you really want them on board, and the adrenaline starts because you've got these expectations of what you're going to get in an interview. And the candidate has that as well. So it's making sure that you make this a really positive experience for them. So you've got all of the candidates presented to you. You've looked at your initial CVs and you've decided who you're going to invite in. What do you think is really important to have in the interview with you, or what do you have in the interview with you? So I've listed a few things here. So company history. For people that have worked for a business for donkey's years, they don't have company history with them because they can just recite it off. But what I did in one of my last training sessions was got two of the managers to role play, which is part of what we do in our face-to-face. And you know what? They didn't have that company background. So when the one was acting as the candidate and he said, so tell me a bit about the business, tell me about the background, tell me about your values, it was stumble and couldn't actually say it. So again, making sure you know the background of the business, make sure that you know what their mission statement is. Talking about things like eco policy, sustainability, they're really, really key for people at the moment. and what drives decision process through. Bullet points that you feel will be really beneficial to this candidate for the role. So where is this role going to lead? What is it part of? Is it part of a bigger plan? What does that plan look like? And ultimately, what will that then give the candidate? Because that's something that may not be in the job advert, you know about it, and it's something that would definitely sway that candidate's decision on if they're going to choose you. Now, it's really important, we always say to people, as a hiring manager, you think that you're just interviewing the candidate, but they're interviewing you. So we say to our candidates when they go to interview, this is as much about you interviewing the client as them interviewing you. It's got to feel right for both of you, because if it isn't, you're not going to get to the 3-month review stage that we do, because you'll have realised it's the wrong company to join. The hiring manager's not going to be happy. You all know how much money it costs to spend recruiting. Not just the cost of recruiting, the cost of the time recruiting and the cost of getting it wrong. So to put this effort in beforehand surely is worthwhile doing, to go through all this cycle, forget the really important bits and lose the star candidates. Do you have a reporting structure with you when you're doing interviews? Can they see obviously the chart of the business where they lie? That's one that again people want to see. Who am I going to report into, and who does that person report into? So actually, if you've got somebody that's a real superstar and they potentially 3-5 years, their plan is they want to be not necessarily in your role, in your manager's role, how long is it going to take to get there? And what did that look like for you? How long have you been in your role? Again, it's a fine balance, because we don't just want to bring on people that want to take over the world. We don't want people that want to run before they can walk. But at the same time, I think if I was asked the question, what would I want the girls to be thinking now? It's how I can develop within the business. And I don't put a limit on that, because it's what responsibility do you want to take on board? Where do you want to go? What does your career path look like? And these are all the things that you really need to think of. It's okay you saying to somebody, well, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? They may say to you, well, where do you see me in 5 years' time? Where can I go? Where is there in the business? Because if I'm going to be sat in this role for 5 years, I then need to make sure after that 5 years, it looks really attractive to be staying. Otherwise, why am I investing that time? So it's really thinking about the long-term picture there. So where we've talked about obviously that reporting structure, give people a real feel of where everyone sits in the business, the exposure that they're going to be getting. I think when I look at some of the clients we work with, we don't just work with large corporates, we work with small organisations, and that's just as relevant, because you can be a little fish in a big pond, or you can be very, very open, very, very, very visual. People can see you in a business, and some people want that, some people don't. So that does play a big part in the deciding factor of who they look to join. Okay. So this is the great one. So creating the right impression. And again, we say, have you booked a room? What does that room look like? What's the setting? Now, things have changed since COVID. If we look at how we used to interview before then, how people just used to arrive, COVID forms now for every interview that we do. I remember the morning where we first got locked down in March, we'd got 6 people going in for interview, and every hiring manager was panicking on the phone saying, we can't interview, they can't come in. But obviously looking at the industries they worked in, you will continue to work through COVID. So actually we can't afford not to interview, because we still need the people coming into the business. So what we're going to do, how are we going to adapt this? I used to speak to hiring managers that would never, ever video interview. Never. They'd never telephone interview. It always had to be face-to-face. It always had to be a site tour. And that could involve 2 or 3 hours. That was all of a sudden taken away from you. You couldn't do that. So you either video interviewed or telephone interviewed somebody, or actually you didn't hire. So thinking about the changes that you've gone through, can I ask a question? Has everyone continued to recruit through the pandemic? And have you had to adapt your style to what you've done? Has it been difficult?
It's difficult at first, isn't it? Transitioning to doing it over a video call, for sure, especially if you're someone who really gets a feel for people's body language. And
yeah,
I always try, especially in a first interview, to kind of get people to relax so you actually see the real them. And that's somewhat more challenging to do through a computer. And when we're all adapting to use a computer as well, we're all used to it now, but we weren't at the beginning. So it was tough at the beginning, for sure.
And we all, you know, we always say to people, as you've just said then, April, it's about that feeling, that body language, and how do people come across. Again, the minute you walk in to see somebody now for a face-to-face interview, people still aren't doing handshakes. So, you know, I remember doing coaching in the middle of the pandemic, and, you know, everyone's like, well, do we elbow each other? No, I'm not going to go up and elbow you. I've just met you. You're a new manager. So how do we do this? How do we create that welcoming approach that we want to give? So it was very much sort of saying, you know, obviously due to the current situation, we're not able to shake hands, but I want to thank you ever so much for taking your time to come and meet with me today, and do then your standard icebreakers. So your journey, your parking, whatever it may be, because that person is going to feel really, really awkward stood there in the position that they feel they haven't been welcomed into a business, because you're not able to do that. And likewise, if they're going through a reception or they're going through security and they maybe haven't been able to come into the building, they've maybe had to stand outside, it's pouring down with rain and they're under a shelter, or they're waiting outside there. Obviously, people appreciate the COVID situation and the things that has had to change, but it's about that welcome experience. So letting reception know people are booked in for interviews is an absolute must, or security, or whoever it may be, so that when they arrive, they're addressed in the right way. You're here for an interview with April. April will be with you shortly. She's just in a meeting, like to take a seat. It sounds so basic, but we really have had to go back to basics. I think everyone will admit that, in terms of what you used to be able to do and what you can do now. So again, looking at what is going to form part of your interview. So making sure you've booked a room, looking at refreshments. Now, this is quite weird. We had, and I was telling Bex and Sam about this last week, we had a candidate who went for interview and they were asked, do you want a drink? I don't know what you all do, but for me, you're talking, you need water. So I would always suggest have water in as a refreshment. This particular candidate decided to have a hot drink. So he's nervous for the interview. His hands are shaking. He picks the drink up to have a drink, and unfortunately knocks the cup all over the desk. So in the desk is the desk where the cables all join together. So it's run all over the PowerPoints, it's gone all over the floor, all the connections, it's gone all over the paperwork. So this already very nervous candidate now feels like he has no chance of getting that job, because he feels that he's literally made himself look daft for what he's done, which he definitely isn't, but it's actually put him on the back foot straight away. So we always say to people, don't do that. We all know ourselves, when you're drinking a hot drink, you're in a meeting, you burn your mouth, you definitely don't want to carry on talking in an interview doing that. So again, really, really basic, but make sure that you have refreshments available. And then different things like, the lighting of the room, the heating, have windows open, and making it a welcoming environment. Question for you, where do you all sit when you do an interview? So it's typically like this, isn't it? We sit over a desk. That makes a divide between you and the candidate. Now, I know when you've got your pad and you're here and you've got the CV, you don't want them to see what you're writing. So it's very difficult to think, well, where do I sit? So for me, I would sit sideways. So I'd have my desk in the middle, but it's not as an obstacle between me and the candidate. So it feels really, really welcoming. It doesn't feel like there's an interruption between you, and you don't feel like there's that barrier, but you're still in a position of confidence where you can take your notes. Just takes away that almost pupil-teacher relationship feeling here. We've got a chat. Ideally at a round table. Yeah, that's perfect. It's making sure that there isn't a divide, and looking to ensure that candidate feels that they are being welcomed and it isn't a you and them situation, to create that welcoming environment for them. Okay, so, I've gone the wrong way now. Right, so give me 1 second. Okay, so thinking about, as we said, the icebreaker, it will become very, very visible when you see a candidate relax in interview. Again, you know yourself, you go into the interview, you may have someone, and we'd see it all the time. We'll have a manager call us and we'll have sent a CV across and they say, God, I'm so excited about meeting this candidate. On paper, they look absolutely amazing. So you've got this impression in your head straight away. They come in for interview, you're really excited about meeting them. I find sometimes then that makes me even more nervous at an interview if there's someone really, really good in front of me and I want to create that right impression. So how do you come across? So again, having your checklist, telling the candidate the history about the business. Do you then want to tell them what they know about the role and the company? Do you talk about what success looks like in your team and your business? And do you want to know where their interest came from? So you'll expect everyone to have done their research before they come into you. So like you mentioned, April, you're expecting a candidate to do their research, but then the hiring manager hasn't looked at your CV. So it's making sure it's a two-way street here and that everyone is invested in the process. So first stage interview for us. I'm going to go straight down to the bottom here first before we start. Insight profiling, psychometric testing. Is this something that people use within their businesses? Have you used it? The chat's come up here. Yeah, brilliant. Anyone else actually use psychometric testing? You used insights at all? No? Have you ever got to the stage where you've got two candidates and you can't decide who you want to take on? And it's looking at, right, well, this candidate comes across really well here. On the flip side, this candidate's worked in our industry. So you may have someone who's very industry related or somebody that actually just comes across really well in terms of your DNA, your core values, what do you stand for as a business? So for us, we would always suggest to somebody doing insights or psychometric profiling wherever you can. No, not verbal and numerical, but more about that person, because as a business, you always assess when you're going out to market, what are you looking for? Where's your skill? Where's the skill set lie in the current team? And we would always recommend then looking at where those gaps are. Now, I did training again recently with a group of managers who were struggling to fill some current positions. They've got insights as a business. So the majority of their team were either red or blue. So red is all about give me the detail, don't give me information and get straight to the point. If you're a blue, you want the detail. So typically where you'd see these type of profiles, so management in red, let's say IT, technical, blue, or HR in blue, you want the information, you want to know exactly what you need to do before you go and do something. If you've got a real gap in your business where you've got all blues and all reds, and actually you need some people, so you need some sunshine yellows and some greens, what is that balance that you need to bring in? And I think too often people look at actually just what the skill set is of the person and actually what will they offer us by bringing that profile of an individual in. So being able to actually distinguish that between you. Bex, I know you actually use it. So will you just talk to us a bit about your experience of doing it?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we use it, and that was actually the first time that I'd come across insights completely. So it was all new to me. But it was really, really insightful. And it's one of those things that I was reading through my kind of profile once I'd done it, and I thought, oh gosh, yeah, this is like scarily accurate. It was really strange how it almost shows you kind of your it shows you your strengths and your weaknesses, like as you'd expect, but it also shows things like your kind of blind spots, I suppose, so things that you might not be aware of, which I thought was really interesting. And yeah, I think I guess I'd just support what you said. It's an easy way of kind of balancing the team and making sure that you've got different representation throughout all those different colours.
Yeah, and I think thanks ever so much for sharing that, Bex. I think it's something, particularly if you are in a situation where you've almost appraised and assessed your current team, and what is it that we need in that's going to take our team to the next level, or what is it that's going to balance out the team, or what skill shortage do we currently have? Sam, thanks ever so much for sharing that with everyone. That's a great link, so I would definitely recommend that you use that or look at something similar. But then moving on in terms of the first stage interview, face-to-face interview with line manager where possible. Now we know at the minute we've had to do Teams or we've had to do telephone stage, so that's fine. But what I'm trying to really, really encourage here is that if people do a first stage interview, is there any need to do 4 or 5? Do we need to be sat doing that many interviews? I mean, for me, it's absolutely frightening when I see that still happening, particularly when we are operating in such a candidate-led market, that we're expecting people to come back for 3 or 4 interviews. What is it that you don't know about them after the first or second that you need to see in 4 or 5? Has anyone ever done a 4 or 5 interview process? No, lovely. I do see it happen. I think particularly for more senior level roles, it happens a lot more. But for you, it's again going back to the candidate experience and looking at what do you want to actually tell them about your business. What are you getting across in first stage? So you're talking about the department, you're talking about success stories, you're looking at a candidate's 3-5 year plan. Delve into what the job will do for them. What we typically find is that most candidates will look to accept a role that will stretch them. So whilst you may be looking for the finished article, on their CV, they may be missing 20% of the role element that you're looking for. But typically they'll apply for that because they want to stretch themselves. And you as hiring managers will all know you've been in a situation where you look at someone's CV and you'll say, they've done all of that, so potentially we could only keep them for 12-18 months. How are we going to do that? Because they've already got the basics of what we're looking for. They've done the role profile. So how are we going to actually keep them motivated until they can develop to the next stage? And that's where it's really important that you do think about the development of your team, whether that's training, whether that's upskilling, looking at the package that you can offer and how that can benefit them long term, to make sure how they're going to fit in your organisation, how they're actually going to add value to you and your business. So the first stage is all about getting a feel for the candidate. How are they going to come across? How are they going to get on with everyone? Team fit is really, really important. But psychometrics, I would definitely recommend, and particularly if you're fortunate enough to be in a position where you have got such a close call between 2 or 3 candidates, and you want to really make sure what is going to be the right fit for you and your team. Okay. So moving on from here now, going on second stage. Second stage needs to be more behavioural in nature. So wherever possible, we would always say invite them to meet the team. Again, that hasn't been possible over the last 18 months. But I think if you have ever experienced this, which a lot of our managers do, they'll say, ask them to come in for a couple of hours and they'll sit with the team. Or they'll spend time, they'll do a tour, and we'll get one of the team leaders, supervisors, whatever it may be, to show them around. Get your team involved in the process. If they feel involved in the process, they will be more likely to come on board with the new hire that you're bringing, because they feel that you valued their opinion as well. And that makes for a really happy team. So for me, it should be about how comfortable are they in your environment, and actually, can you see them working there? Over the years, I've brought people in for interviews into the business, and the minute I've put them in the team, I can see it's not going to work. How they've interacted or not interacted. There's been no flow of conversation. I've put them with one of the team leaders or one of my managers at the time. They've not asked any questions. They've not engaged. So to you, they may be engaging, they may be asking the questions, but then to your team, they're not. So it's really, really important to invite them in on that. Now, as a conclusion here, do you ever ask a candidate how they think the interview went? Does anyone ask a candidate at the end of the interview, how do you think it went? Or let me flip that round. How do you feel when a candidate says to you after an interview, how did I get on there then? Did I do well? Did you enjoy that interview? I've had it, and I really don't, I don't answer it to start with. But also it's very much about the fact that when you have finished interviewing somebody, you're putting somebody very much on the spot asking that. So if they said to you, how do you think I've got on in this interview, Bex? Did you enjoy that? Did you enjoy meeting me? You're going to be, oh yeah, I enjoyed meeting. I haven't had time to speak to my colleague yet. We haven't had a discussion about how you came across. We haven't spoke to one of the supervisors who went round. We haven't looked at your testing, whatever it may be. So if anyone does ask the candidate how they think it went, don't, because you're doing exactly the same thing to them. Obviously ask if they have any questions for you. And as we've said, invite them to meet the team and spend time in the office. One thing that's really, really important for me at the moment is the expectation. So when you start an interview process, be committed to it. Don't go into an interview process thinking, well, I need to fill this role, but you know what? I've got umpteen things going on at work. I actually don't have time to be invested in it. Because that's where you will lose that reputation straight away, and you'll be known in the candidate marketplace as somebody who wastes time, and they'll tell everybody that they know if they come across you going for interview. So make sure that you keep people informed, set clear expectations. If somebody comes in to meet you for a first stage interview and you need to do a second stage, tell them and give them a bit of an idea of, you know, if you're using a recruiter, 9 times out of 10, the recruiter will have said to them, it's a 2-stage interview process. They're looking to hire somebody ASAP. The decision will be with you 48 hours after your first stage interview. If you're not using a recruiter, make sure you set those clear expectations yourself so that people aren't left in the process wondering actually what's going on. You know, have I been successful? Nobody likes giving bad feedback. I hate, it's the worst part of our job when we've got somebody, well, anybody who's gone for an interview who doesn't get the role. It's really, really disheartening, you know, and especially when we've been given feedback that, oh, I just saw somebody who was a stronger fit for our business. So that candidate, they don't know what a stronger fit for your business is. So give clear, concise feedback. So if you felt that they didn't demonstrate the passion to work in your sector, in your department, in your industry, evidence that and why. What was it that they said that alluded to that fact? So don't just do it on your perception of what they've said. Base it on what have they actually said that would mean long term this is not going to work. 9 times out of 10, then when we go back to a candidate and give them the feedback and say, the hiring managers informed us that during the interview, you actually made them aware of X, Y, Z. And unfortunately, that's one of the reasons why they don't feel this is going to be right for you. Do you agree with that? Is that fair? They'll say, yeah, I realised the minute I said that, I shouldn't have said it. Or whatever it may be. We'll always come back to the hiring manager at that point and share their feedback. But it's really important that you are very, very clear, that you make sure you're giving somebody feedback where they can go away from that interview and improve. So even if you haven't taken them, you are letting them go away with a positive experience of you. And 9 times out of 10, they'll thank you for your time. They'll be grateful for that opportunity. But it's about what they can take away from the time they've invested into you and your business. So where we've mentioned, you know, if you feel someone is going to be an asset to your team and your business, move. Don't invite in the CEO or whoever you need to make a decision. Know that you can make that decision and go ahead with it. So if you're able to go to offer, go to offer. If not, you need to do a second stage. Brilliant. But as we've said, most candidates and hiring managers come away from interviews not actually knowing how it's gone. So you'll know yourself, you know, someone's just left you and you think, oh, I really like them, but I don't know if they liked me, because at the end of the interview, I just wasn't sure. And likewise, we'll have candidates on the phone to us to say, I think it went well, didn't start off great, but then I think by the end, I turned things around, I answered all of the questions. But it's mixed messages. Both of you have come away from the interview not knowing. So we try and make sure that we go back to both parties then straight away to reassure you that actually, yes, they do want to join your business, and for you then to be reassured that you can go ahead and make an offer. So if that's you working as an independent hiring manager on your own, communication is just key all the way through and setting those expectations. Okay. Now we all love these typical examples of interview questions. How are we doing for time? We're okay. When you say to someone, why are you the best person for this position? They actually don't know what the best person is for your position. They don't know who you're interviewing alongside them. They don't know actually what makes them the right person for the role. So almost thinking about what skills do you feel that you have to bring to the business would be a better question to ask. So why are you the best candidate for this role and why should we hire you are very, very limited if they don't know anything about you or your business, to the point where what you're looking for. So what skill set do you feel that's relevant to the role that you've applied to? So get them to explore that way first. Have you seen a copy of the full job description? Is typically something that people ask. You would like to think they have, that they've applied for it, but they may have just seen an advert online and not the internal house notice. So just be mindful of the fact they could be very different, and actually the information on one could be a lot more than another. So that's maybe why they're missing some of the information that you feel they should know. What qualifications are relevant to this position? What's your most significant achievement? So everyone is going to be very different when they talk about what their achievements are. It's something that's important to them, may not be important to you, but you'll feel a sense of what makes that person proud and actually how you're going to motivate them in the business, which comes on to the next question. So what motivates you and what are you looking for? Now, one I really like is tell me something about you that isn't on your CV, because you're trying to get into the person again, and it's looking for, as we mentioned at the start, not how to just identify this person, but to retain them. So something that isn't on your CV may give you that inside information to know how to develop this person in the right way and ultimately how to retain them. And perfectly, again, what do they enjoy doing outside of work? All of these things will show you the culture of the individual. And I know personally for myself, I'd always like to bring people in that aren't the finished article, nurture and develop them and give them the rewards that they deserve, rather than bringing somebody in who's been there, done it, and actually wants to take over the world in 6 weeks. So having someone that you can really invest in and show that you're a supportive manager to them. An example of time where you've shown initiative, again, that may be something that's relevant to the role and that you want to ask, and are you an innovative person? So if you were going to be out of the business and they were going to be shadowing while you were out, or they were going to be dealing with your clients, are they somebody that can think on their feet? And moving on to the next question, where you talked about how do you handle a major crisis? A major crisis to one person may definitely not be a major crisis to somebody else. So when we've all had years doing what we're doing, a lot of us would sit there and go, that's really not a crisis at all, whereas other people would be on panic mode because something's happened that they can't resolve, and for you to think how they're going to react in those situations. So think about what they can bring to the company, an example of their lateral thinking and how do they manage their time and prioritize tasks. And why do you think you'll be successful in this job? That's the point where they're going to talk about what they've seen, the success stories, where people have developed. I know when we're sending people for interview, we would send a list of people to look at on LinkedIn, not to go out and connect with them, because we'd say it looks a bit stalkerish before you even know people, but actually to look at, we're not just telling you this is a great company to work for. These are the people in the business. This is where they've started. This is their journey. Go away and research that yourself. Understand what it is that makes that person a success. How have they done well? You want somebody coming into your team who admires you as a manager, who's done their research and actually thinks, do you know what? By joining a business like this, working for this person as a manager, I've got somebody to really work towards and to look up to. And all of those things are major motivators for somebody wanting a role. How do you deal with conflict? Now, interesting situation. We never like to talk about negatives in interviews. So conflict is a huge negative. And one question that actually isn't on here, and the reason it's not on here is because I really, really don't like it. Tell me about your biggest weakness. Why are we asking people weaknesses in an interview? So straight away, you're putting somebody on the back foot. And a weakness is not a scientific fact. It's your perception. So it's your perception of yourself. So for me, if I was to say, my perception is I'm not the most technical person. When it comes to my IT issues, I've got to have somebody to do it for me because I don't understand it. It's something that I don't have a strength in. So it's playing to your strengths, but don't ask somebody what is their biggest weakness, because straight away you're putting a negative into what should be a positive situation. So talking about what areas do you feel we could help you develop in? So where would you need further support? And actually, how could we work with you on this? Forms more of a partnership then, rather than actually expecting somebody to talk to you about a negative in a situation where they're trying to show a positive light. Example demonstrates your team skills. Again, you're looking for that culture fit, you're looking for your business. And actually, where necessary, where have you had to lead and motivate people? So is this somebody that can really step in when you need them to? Is this somebody to take on the next challenge? Now, we have hundreds more examples of interview questions, which I'll be happy to share with any of you if you want to explore those further, but they're just a summary of them there. So key points here, enter the interview, availability to commence employment, as we've discussed. I don't know, does everybody have a mentoring program in their business? Bex, you're nodding. Anybody else? No? April?
I think they do. I mean, I'm fairly fresh into this business. I definitely heard people talking about it, but I don't know the ins and outs of it yet.
Okay, no problem. A mentoring program is something that we've worked quite a lot with businesses on. I think most businesses who have graduates have a mentor straight away assigned to them. What about your middle level? You know, if you've got somebody who, right, not a formalized one, that's absolutely fine. Again, I can, you know, happy to sort of talk you through that if you want some more information. I think having a mentoring program makes everybody feel valued in a business. So if you've got somebody to go to that's outside of, it's not their current manager, maybe somebody in a different department that they don't get any exposure to. So let's look at a business that has a commercial operation, a finance operation, an engineering operation, sales, whatever that may be. Those potentially never speak to each other on a day-to-day basis. So actually to have a mentor from one of those departments, you'll understand a lot more about the impact your role has within their area of the business. And working with somebody as a mentor that actually doesn't know you and take you out of your comfort zone, actually give you that motivation you need. And then when you're going back and you're having your one-to-one with your team, because they've had this mentoring available to them, makes them feel so much more valued. We'd always encourage, and the programs we've actually designed for people, we would always encourage them to take them off site. So even if it's for a coffee, going for lunch, whatever it may be, there's never any rooms available in any of the places we all work to sit and do this. So to go off site, it's not so formal, but it's about the development of people. So how are you investing? How are you looking to retain them? And it's something we're asked on a regular basis. Do they have a mentoring program? And it's just important for senior people in the team to have a mentor as well. Somebody as a go-to, somebody that they can share best practice with, and actually, as I said, just get an understanding of what's going on in the wider business and what does the impact of my role have. So again, be happy to help with that. Discussing salary requirements, discussing performance package reviews. Now, big one at the moment is benefits package available. So we all talk about a salary, and everyone I work with is up against the salary because they don't want to give somebody an extra £5,000 because then that would mean that I've got to give everybody in the business an extra £5,000, or there's going to be a mass walkout. So it's very much about what can we offer. I appreciate not every business has endless funds in terms of cash flow. So what can we offer? Everyone wants to work from home. That isn't possible in a lot of the industries we work with. And unfortunately, the pandemic has created that where a lot of people did work from home and now they can't see why that isn't available now. The benefits package, even down to small things like a perk box. Are they getting discount off a gym membership? Are they getting discounted dentist, opticians? It's all things that help for the health of your team at the end of the day. And then whether that be, you know, cinema tickets, you're investing in time for them to enjoy with their family and friends. It's, you know, it's very, very low in terms of cost to do, a massive high reward at the moment. I think when we're speaking to people and they're saying, no, we don't offer anything, they will always choose another company that offers something. So death in service, we don't ever like to talk about, but again, people want to know. Healthcare at the moment, again, NHS, people are worried about having, you know, fallen ill and having to wait on NHS waiting lists. So private healthcare, it's not always about salary. You know, can they buy holidays? Do they have an option to buy an extra day's holiday? Little things like that. So when you're looking at putting a package together, it doesn't just end up with what goes in their monthly salary. It's what the whole package looks like. Is that going to support their family if anything happens to them? Is that actually going to help them to have a more affordable lifestyle by having some of the healthcare covered? So look at those options of what you can do. You're very welcome. Any details, Gwen, you just give me a call. Sorry, just jumping onto chat. I think from my point of view, it's making sure that you can offer something. So you're not just saying, sorry, we can't give any more salary. Sorry, we don't have any more holidays available. Sorry, we're not able to do this, because they will then just go somewhere else. And the packages at the moment that some companies are giving are quite scary in terms of salary increases. You know, we're working with candidates that are maybe currently on, let's say, for example, 35,000, they're going somewhere else and they're being offered 40, 44, 45 straight away to go. So it's a difference of £10,000 that they're actually moving for. And for me, that is a big, big difference. So, okay. Final sort of steps here. So just to sort of finish up, candidate checklist, something that we actually do and something that I'm happy to share with all of you and send out. We do a candidate checklist and a scoring sheet, which actually helps you benchmark candidates that you're interviewing. Everybody's entitled legally now to ask for feedback. So if you've put feedback on the back of a CV or just on notes, and then a candidate asks to physically see that, and it makes sense to you, but it doesn't make sense to the end user, that's really important. So I'm happy to go through those if anyone wants to get in contact. Finally, I'm also happy to do a one-to-one free session with any hiring managers that wants a bit more information. So that would be a free session, there'd be no cost involved on that. And then finally, final slide, key takeaways. So understanding how to sell yourself and your organisation to make sure you get ahead of your competitors. We've just squeezed what I normally do in 6 or 7 hours into an hour. So there's a lot more that I can cover, and I'm more than happy to share this with you. Make sure you spend your time wisely hiring the right candidates for your business. Recruitment's really expensive. Let's get it right and showcase yourself in the best way. But most importantly, make sure you retain those candidates, because that cost of hiring and then losing them is really detrimental to the business. So there we go. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm 4 minutes over. Sam, Bex, apologies.
Not to worry, that was so good, Kate. Thanks so much for that. And like you said, you've squeezed so much information into literally an hour. So
I know, I'm literally like, I want to share more, but I can't.
I'm conscious that, yeah, people might have to drop off and go off to other meetings, but thanks everybody so much for joining. And yeah, thank you very much, Kate. That was fabulous. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks ever so much, everyone.
Thanks, Kate. That was great.
Very much.
See you later, Bex. Bye, Sam.
Thank you. Take care.